What's up, Browns fans? Spencer German on site here in Baltimore, where it's about, I don't know, 10, 20 degrees or so outside. Pretty cold. But we're here for the season finale of the 2024 Cleveland Browns season. Anthony Moeglin alongside in the warmth of his own home, it looks like, which I'm very envious of. But Anthony, the Browns do wrap up the 2024 season today. Unceremoniously, as it's a game that I think a lot of people kind of felt going into the year could have had a little bit more meaning at this point in the season. Chance to play Baltimore on the road, maybe for a division title, maybe for a wild card spot, something along those lines. And we know this season has gone the complete opposite of that. But obviously, the Ravens playing for a lot more with a chance to close out the division today. And the big news on the Browns side of things is that they have another quarterback starting under center today, Bailey Zappi. He's the 40th starting quarterback since the team returned in 1999 to the Browns. What are you expecting from your perspective to see from Bailey Zappi today?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, going back to his college days, big Bailey Zappi fan, went to Western Kentucky and just totally lit it up. Had more passing yards in college than Joe Burrow did, and fun passer way back in the day. And then the lasting memory is when he played for the Patriots. They came to Cleveland. I was at the game.
Yeah,
totally dismantled the Cleveland Browns on that day. So what I'm expecting or hoping, I guess, is to just watch him throw it around a little bit. Get through progressions, throw the ball to Jerry Jeudy a lot, and maybe have a little bit of fun. I don't know. I probably hope that they can cover a 20-point spread, but we'll see. It'll certainly be it's an all too familiar feeling to have another starting quarterback in week 18 when it doesn't mean anything for us.
Yeah, I think it speaks overarchingly to the idea that the Browns obviously have a lot of questions to answer at the quarterback position this offseason. I don't know if Bailey Zappi gives you a better chance to win than DTR. I guess there's some mystery there, and that we've never seen him in this offense yet. We haven't had a chance to see him play for this team, so maybe there's this unknown factor of he could be somebody who unlocks something with this group. But the way the offense has looked the last 2 weeks, with DTR, it's been miserable. 9 points in 2 games. Just really struggling to get anything going. So I get where you're looking for something here in the final game. And I know Bailey, he talked about it this week, really treating this as almost an audition, for wherever he ends up next year, a chance to sort of show what he can still do and bring to the table. So we'll see how he plays. We'll see if the offense looks better. It's not going to be an easy task because this offense is extremely shorthanded coming into this game. Team placing David Njoku, Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong on the IR yesterday. Which coupled with some of the other injuries that we know about. Cedric Tillman obviously has been on the IR now for over a week. We know Nick Chubb's obviously been out for a couple weeks now. It's basically the Jerry Jeudy show out there, Megs. It's Jerry Jeudy and kind of the Island of Misfit Toys. I guess Elijah Moore as well. I'm not going to put him in the Island of Misfit Toys. That's kind of disrespectful. But it's going to be tough sledding though with an offense that's just lacking a lot of its weapons right now.
Yeah, and juxtapose that to the Baltimore Ravens defense, who's one of the best in the league. Obviously, they lost to us in that crazy game a number of weeks back. That was the Jim Donovan game for sure.
Yeah,
Kyle Hamilton. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and the Jim Donovan part of it always is a cool factor we'll always remember. But I also think too, the Ravens' pass defense was one of the worst in football at that time. That's changed. Their pass defense is playing a lot better these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And Marlon Humphrey's been great. Kyle Hamilton's kind of come into his own. He would have had the game-winning interception against us if not for Jim getting in there and ripping that ball out because it was an unbelievable drop that he had that gave us the victory. So, obviously I feel like they're going to want to rewrite that or right that wrong, if you will. But ultimately they have the AFC North on the line. If they win, AFC North goes through Baltimore for yet another season. So my guess is that they're going to approach this very business-like, try to just put their foot on the throat of the Cleveland Browns from the jump and just not let anything get weird, anything go crazy. Because I don't even know if the NFL has ever seen a 20-point spread, but, you just don't want it to even have any sort of life. So my guess is that they're going to approach this very professionally, get in, get out, and try to just take care of business in the most effective way possible.
Yeah, and obviously, like I said, they have a chance to lock up the AFC North with a win, so they have something to play for. Browns, obviously, that is not the case. They do not have something to play for in that way. But yeah, it's they're kind of playing for a draft pick, and we know the storylines there. We'll get into that here in a second. Just what needs to happen for them to end up potentially with the number one overall pick. But the other sort of big storylines on the Browns side of things, or I guess notable storylines, are obviously the fact that this is Rodney McLeod's last game as an NFL player. Some sentiments there. A guy who he's only been here 2 years, but it feels like he's had a massive impact on this locker room and this team. I think the fans really love Rodney and some of his media appearances. I know he's jumped on 92 to the fan a bunch this year, and he's very candid and talks about the game in a really cool way. So I think that's been enjoyable for fans. And I think he certainly has kind of become, I don't know about a household name, but a player that people respect and enjoy here in Cleveland. And then the other big one is a guy that everybody knows, definitely a household name, Joel Bitonio, who, after Joe Thomas retired, they played together, and then he left, and he kind of became like the staple lineman that everybody knew on this offensive line. He's been a pro's pro. He's a Cleveland Brown through and through. But this potentially could be his last game. He continues to kind of say he's not making any decisions till after the season, and he's going to take some time to sort of think through it and talk about it. He did talk this week about how he does think Kevin Stefanski's culture is still very much intact, even in a bad year, and that guys still buy into everything he's selling, which I think was a notable moment from this week. But yeah, like it's potentially the swan song for Joel Bitonio. For those who maybe travel down to the game or are watching at home, that's kind of an underlying story that could come away from this one.
Yeah, and you feel so bad for Joel Bitonio for sure, because thought this team had turned the corner, really thought you had flipped it around and we're going to get back to relevance with him on this roster. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. And your hope is that he comes back and plays. Frankly, he's been playing really, really good football the past 5 or 6 weeks. And for me especially, I thought he had lost a step and was kind of on his way out the door, but he's turned it around and played pretty good. So if he wants to try and give it one more shot, and he's like, hey, let's give it a last go next year, I think everybody in Cleveland would welcome that with open arms. And then the Rodney McLeod part of it, like, yeah, he's been here for 2 years, but he's such like this legend. He was Super Bowl champ with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he brought so much hope when we signed him. And like you said, been that steady hand, that veteran presence that he's played through a lot. There's very easily could have just hung it all up early in the season when it got weird, and instead he didn't. He kept coming to work, he kept going, and that's something that is something that Browns fans I think are proud of in that sense. We've seen a ton of guys who go the other direction. He's certainly not that case.
He was one of those guys that very much leaned into the idea that they had unfinished business here this year, and unfortunately it didn't come to fruition the way that they wanted. But you hope that players like him and with that same mentality want to stick around and be part of this organization moving forward, and that's something that does, along the lines of Kevin Stefanski's culture, stays intact for years to come. Speaking of the offseason that awaits, we know a lot of questions. We'll hear from these guys, a lot of them tomorrow at locker room cleanout day, and just kind of their perspective on things and everything kind of going on. So that'll be interesting to see what guys are saying in the locker room tomorrow. But we know that this game does mean something in terms of setting the tone for the Browns offseason, because right now they're slotted as the number 3 pick in the draft. If they lose today, they're guaranteed to have at least the 3rd overall pick. They'll have a top 3 pick in the draft this upcoming year, or this upcoming spring. But if they win, or if they lose and some other things happen, they have a chance to move up even higher. Patriots have to get a win. Titans have to get a win. Both those teams, though, playing teams, Megs, that are going to likely be resting their starters for at least large portions of those games, the Bills and the Texans. And so I'm going to be honest, man, I'm coming to this game, there is a realistic possibility that the Browns end the weekend with the number 1 overall pick in the draft, which would be crazy.
It would be out of control, and it would give you everything you wanted. If you wanted to, take a swing on Shedeur Sanders, great. If you're like, hey, none of him nor Cam Ward have it, we want to wait. You can trade back, and gather a ton of draft capital, because frankly, yes, quarterback is, once you've solved the quarterback position, this roster is pretty ready to go. But I think that you could get some more elite talent at some other positions when you talk about succession planning, when you talk about needing left tackles and right tackles, and you talk about needing some key positions, maybe not next year, but in the years to come. I think that they can really and strategically do that. Obviously, our conversation will get much deeper into that topic when we know. But if you come out of here with the 1 or the 2 pick, man, you got to be feeling pretty darn good about it.
Yeah, and like I said, I maybe both those teams lose because they are bad teams. But they're, Bill's going to be resting some guys. I know Josh Allen's going to start that game because he's trying to keep his starting streak alive. He's got like 115 games in a row of starting. But in the Texans, it sounds like they're going to try to build some momentum for the playoffs because they've had a little bit of a bad run here. But again, like the opportunities for both those teams, I don't go into either of those games feeling like it can't happen. And plus, after we watched the Giants lose last week, how can you not think any of these teams could win on any given Sunday? So we'll see how those play out tomorrow. First things first, if you're somebody pulling for the first overall pick or a better draft pick, the Browns have to lose today. Now, I don't think they're going into this game, trying to lose purposefully. They'll play hard, but given what the spread is, I think it'll kind of take care of itself. So we'll see. But yes, this is the questions about the offseason and where things kind of go from here. It all starts with this Week 18 match with the Ravens, because this will dictate where they end up in the draft and the possibilities that come with that. So, guys, we appreciate you stopping by with us here for this pregame conversation. Kick off a little over 2 hours from now. I'll be here covering it for you. We'll be back post-game, obviously, with another conversation just about this game and everything that kind of breaks down. And we'll talk more about the future in terms of like the draft position that the Browns end up with. So lots more to come, including articles and pieces throughout the game over at Cleveland Browns on SI or si.com/NFL/Browns. And, of course, more content like this over at the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel. We implore you to keep on following along. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. We'll talk to you guys again real soon after the game today. In the meantime, keep on following along for all your Cleveland Browns coverage. The Cleveland Browns on SI.